Hello and welcome back to another coding session with Mr. Jacob. This is part 2 of our Neovim from scratch series where we are configuring Neovim from absolutely nothing to a full-blown IDE satisfying all of your development needs. In the last session, we started by installing a plugin manager where we used LazyVim for. We installed and configured a proper theme here, which is Kanagawa. We took care of the status line, which you can see down here. We installed a proper file manager like this, where we can navigate around and create new files by simply editing the buffer called oil-envim. We set some basic options, like for example the lines in the gutter here and the relative lines and some key bindings there for a neater environment there. We pre-configured our indentation levels and stuff and activated automatic space indentation usage by Vim. We furthermore installed a plugin which is called Vim Sleuth, which actually is capable of detecting the indentation style and levels of all different kinds of source files if we haven't configured it beforehand somewhere, so that we are kind of always using the right style there. Furthermore, I published a short video just right after my part 1 series, which is kind of the part 1.5, where I showed how you can actually integrate editor config files into your Neovim experience to actually make it detect them automatically while you are working if you have them in your project. Today will be about mostly treesitter and treesitter-textobjects and what treesitter is, what we can do with it, why we want it, and all that kind of stuff. But before we go to treesitter, I want to actually address some other issue because somebody asked me from the community here watching these videos if I wouldn't be able to run one of those neat little programs which show you the keystrokes that I'm pressing while editing in the eye, and I said, yeah, sure, why not? If you have a request in something like this regard, if you want to know something or want to tell me something, please just leave a comment to my videos. I always try to answer them. It helps with the YouTube algorithm much, and it's always a great thing to get feedback from you. I love that. So please do that if you want to. But I decided not to install one of the usual programs there that is out there to show my keyboard's keystrokes from everywhere, so to speak. But I thought this is a Neovim session, so why not use a Neovim plugin? And there is a plugin called Showkeys actually. And that is actually the one that I want to install here. It's from the NV Zone. That's the same organization and the same guys that actually make the NV Chat full-blown pre-configured IDE-style Neovim. So if you are interested in not doing something from scratch like we are doing here to fully understand what is actually happening there, but you just want to get going, check out NV Chat. It's actually a nice plugin and infrastructure system there, which is quite neat to use actually. We can nevertheless use this Showkeys plugin by itself by simply copying this entry here to install it, and then go back into our files here where we have our plugins. We are simply creating a showkeys.lua here. Going out of the help because I pressed the wrong button here. Let's go back there. Let's save that. Let's create that file, go into that file, and now simply return what we just got there from the internet, because pasting from the internet is always a good idea, isn't it? Okay, so now we have this installed and we actually set it to be loaded by lazy.nvim if the showkeys toggle command is executed. So once we restart Vim here, we see that showkeys showkeys is actually installed and available by the showkeys toggle command. Now, if we do showkeys toggle here as a command, it actually will show in the down right corner there, you can see it here, all of my commands that I'm issuing here. So if I do something like pressing big O, it is here. If I'm doing something like DD, you will see it. If I'm using a cursor movement there, you will see it. And by the way, I'm one of those guys who seldomly or not rigorously use the HJKL movement keys, but I'm using cursor keys as well. So I think you will have to live with that. I'm sorry. So we already have that thing, but I know myself. I will forget to actually enable that every time we are going out of Vim and back into Vim again. So let's quickly make sure that it is actually executed every time. So we can easily do that by simply going into our NVim here and opening up our, lazy initialization, where we go to the bottom here, and now simply tell the system that after we have initialized everything, I might want to do a comment here, something like for video recording purposes or something like that. I will do a vim cmd and I will simply do showkeys toggle here so that it is actually initially toggled on when we start nvim. And now you can see it's automatically enabled there. If I'm typing here something, it will automatically be enabled when I'm in VI or Neovim. So let's see if we can configure something, because I know we can actually change the max keys, and that's something that I really would like to change, because 3 is a little bit too little, I think. So let's do go to showkeys here, and let's do an opts here. Let's not worry about the formatting too much yet, because we will later on in another session install an automatic formatter, and then we can easily reformat all of our files. So this one was max keys, so I might set that to 5. And let's quickly kind of try and indent that. Let's go ahead and re-indent the whole file. It was already particularly well indented. Let's go out of that. Let's go in. And now we should have 5 keys there. I think that's a good compromise between you being able to see actually what I'm doing there and not wasting too much screen space. So, okay, we now have actually installed showkeys. So let's quickly X that one out here and let's talk about treesitter. Now we are kind of warm in installing and managing our Neovim plugins there again after installing showkeys. Okay, treesitter. What is treesitter and why would you actually want that? Treesitter actually is first and foremost a parser generator. So treesitter is not specific to Neovim. Neovim is just using treesitter via an implementation within the Neovim core, as well as a plugin called Neovim treesitter. And treesitter is a parser generator which is capable of first of all, generating really efficient parsers, which are quite error tolerant, which is a good thing because we need to parse files while we are editing them. And therefore, they might not be complete. They might be broken at some position at most all of the time because actually we are editing in them. And treesitter actually generates parsers that are kind of easy on errors. They can continue parsing most of the files even though parts of it are broken. Furthermore, treesitter can generate incremental parsers, which is quite important as well, because we don't want to always, with each change, reparse the whole file, but only the changes that we made, and we want to keep all the rest and just update our syntax tree. Now you might ask, why the hell do we need a specific syntax tree? We have syntax highlighting here within this file. If I go into the plugins folder here, we have syntax highlighting in this Lua file as well. So obviously it seems that VI does something there which already does a good job of highlighting that. And actually you are true. Neovim does something there. It uses a couple of very sophisticated, regular expression collection to actually parse all of that setup here, to parse that files with regular expressions and then do the syntax highlighting on that. The problem is that it does not know the real syntax tree of the file. That makes, first of all, syntax highlighting a little bit more complicated. It makes it a little bit slower. And as Neovim does not know about the syntax tree that the language that we are currently working on there has, it can't do a couple of neat features, like, for example, select specific syntax tree elements, like, so, for example, something like select the whole function or select a specific class or, in this case, a table or something like that. And with treesitter, we can actually do all of that. And it is the case that, as I've said, Neovim has implemented support for treesitter parsers. There are a lot of treesitter parsers that you can see here in the list of supported languages. So for mostly any language that you can think of, there is most likely a treesitter parser out there. Those treesitter parsers are actually, let's for example go into one of those here, and let's take a look, are actually defined in a specific dialect of JavaScript. But no worries, they are not executed as JavaScript. This dialect actually only configures kind of how the language actually is defined and parsed, so the grammar rules for that. And then this is compiled to a specific JSON format, and this is then compiled to highly optimized C code to actually generate a parser for that. And all of those languages have those grammar files and something that is called queries. We will see that later on and how we can use that. And they are supported by treesitter. And the Neovim or Nvim treesitter plugin here actually takes care of installing all of that treesitter parsers for us and simply plugging them into Neovim for Neovim to work with. So I think we should quickly go to the quick start page here and install Neovim. As you can see here, treesitter is quite recently addition, so you need the 0.10 version of Neovim, so at the moment of making this video, a quite recent version there. Installed in order to do that. If you want your system actually to automatically install missing treesitter parsers when you are opening a file, you need the treesitter command line utility as well, which you can, for example, on macOS install easily via Homebrew. So I can easily do something like brew install treesitter. And it should actually go ahead and try to install treesitter, which I already have installed. So yeah, it only tells me that I have some outdated formulas, and actually it's called tree-sitter. So a good thing that I checked that. Okay, so how do we actually install this treesitter plugin? Well, it doesn't tell us how to do that with LazyVim, but it gives us an example here for a couple of other installations there. There is actually an example here. Okay, so let's maybe take that one here and let's copy that. I didn't even know they have this by now in the wiki. That's a nice thing. So let's do an nvim treesitter Lua here. Let's create that. Yes, let's go into that file and let's paste the information here. And yeah, that's not really what we want. What we want is kind of this here, I think. Okay, so now we should actually have that. And let's quickly look through that. So we are installing the Nvim treesitter plugin. We are ensuring that every time the plugin is actually updated or installed, it will call this tsupdate function, which then in turn takes care of, for example, installing all the needed treesitter parsers for us. We will usually not want something like a sync install because it is always async and that's the way we go. We want to enable highlighting support. That's a nice thing there. And we want to enable indentation support, which is experimental, but in my experience, it works quite well, actually. So what do we have here by this installed languages here? We have a list of languages that we actually are going to install here. Let me move that a little bit down so you can actually see that we are actually going to install treesitter parsers here. For example, C, Lua, Vim, Vimdoc, Query, Elixir, Hix, JavaScript, and HTML. And you can add everything from this, let's go back here, from this big list of supported languages. You can essentially add any of those languages to the list here for treesitter to install their language there. There is another possibility that I already talked about. You can actually do and set this auto install property to true. If you do that actually, and you have the treesitter command installed on your system, it will automatically install treesitter parsers for every file type that is opened the first time when there is no treesitter parser there. So that's actually a neat feature. Nevertheless, I don't usually use it because I want actually to have a self-contained configuration. And we will see later on with language server protocol servers and stuff like that, that I tend to have those fixed, configured in my .files repository. And when I check that out somewhere and run Neovim for the first time, it will actually install everything that is needed, and I have everything at my fingertips then, and don't need to kind of wait until I open something up for it to install stuff, because I'm on the road often with my system, and then I want to have everything there that I actually have configured there and that I need there. But you can actually tell it to do an auto install there, and I think we will do that here now for just the demonstration purposes, and because we are not currently on the road, because I'm recording this video where I have a steady internet connection. And what is actually going on here? Something strange there, maybe a little conflict there, I don't know. There was an error. Let's just go out of that and let's open that again, and now it should install treesitter actually. It did, and now you can see down here that it is installing all the pre-configured treesitter parsers. And if I go out of here, you can already see that the syntax highlighting changed. And actually for Markdown, it is not that good. So it is actually kind of bad, because before we could differentiate between the links here, for example, the link names and the URLs. Now we can't anymore. And this is kind of a problem most likely with your theme, or in this case, the people from the Kanagawa theme thought that it should be a little bit more unobtrusive if you're editing text. So they chose this configuration here, which I can get behind, but nevertheless, I like it a little bit different, and I will show you in a second how you can actually change that. For now, let's go into something else. Let's go back into our Lua file here, and now you might wonder, okay, what changed? Not much changed there. So why did we do this, and how can we actually check that it worked? We can, for example, call, let's go maybe just to this here, to this function here, and let's call inspect. And we will see now that the system now knows that actually the keyword, or that what's under our cursor here, is a keyword function in Lua. So it actually knows this is a keyword, it's a function, and it's from the Lua language. So it actually parsed this file and has now a syntax tree of it, which we can actually see. And I'm really not sure what this is. Let me take a look. It is actually from showkeys. Okay, that's interesting. So showkeys seems to make a problem here. I don't really know why, but maybe we will need to disable that again. If that's the case, then I'm sorry. Okay, so we are now within the treesitter thing here, and what I wanted to show you is that you cannot only do inspect, but you can do inspect tree. And if you do inspect tree, for example, you are seeing the whole syntax tree that actually has been created by parsing this file. And as you can see, I can even go through this tree, and on each level that I actually specify here, you can see that it highlights on the left only the regions that actually are part of this corresponding tree element here. So for example, we have this function call here, which is in here. So that's actually what is highlighted here. Or what we can do, go further down here, and there, for example, is a string. There here is a table constructor. This is actually this ensured installed table here, which is now highlighted, and it consists of different strings, which we can highlight each by one another. So now our VI actually understands how a file is structured. And we can use that information not only for proper indentation, but and highlighting, but we can actually use it as well to select regions of a file. And that is one of the treesitter features that is really neat, and I want to show it to you. So let's take a look at the treesitter documentation here, and I think it's somewhere under available modules. And yeah, that's the highlighting module, consistent syntax highlighting. That's already nice. As I've said, we will take a look at the Markdown syntax highlighting. We will take a look and make that a little bit nicer because I want it a little bit nicer later on. However, yeah, that's kind of the explanation how you can actually customize your highlighting there. But what we want is incremental selection, and incremental selection actually is a really nice thing to have. So let's copy this part out here as a basis for what we want to do. So we can now take this here and then we can just put it in here. Let's quickly re-indent our whole file here nicely. Okay, perfect. So what this actually now does is it wants a key mapping. It wants a key mapping to start a selection, to incrementally select more, either by node or by scope. And then we can do the same thing in reverse by going back with the selection. And I have used in the past enter key as the init and enter as well as incremental selection once we initialize that. And I usually don't use scope incremental because I really don't need that usually. And I use usually the backspace key here for going back in the selection. So now that I have actually done that and I've restarted Neovim here, let's see what we can actually do with that. Do you remember that we had before the tree, which consisted of all of those strings here and then a table and stuff like that? If I now press enter, it will actually select the node under my cursor. So if I press enter again, it will expand that node to the string, the next higher level. If I press it again, it will give me the contents of that table because that is a tree level higher. If I press again, it will give me the tree level higher, which is this assignment. If I press enter again, it will give me the table that is actually part of this setup call function, the parameter here, which is put to the setup function. If I press again, it will give me the function call and then the function name and identifier as well. And I think you get the gist of it. So if I press backspace, I can actually go back to my string here. And this is actually a really neat thing if you do not want to learn all the different shortcuts for text objects and stuff, or for text objects, which could, for example, be this curly brace area here. And yeah, that's actually something that you might not want to learn in the beginning, or you are not using that much and therefore you are forgetting it all the time. Then treesitter can actually help you here, because let's assume I only want to kind of delete the contents of this table. I can just press a couple of times enter, press D, and it's gone. So that's kind of a little bit more easy than just doing or remembering something like DAB here, which actually deletes the around of a curly brace area. So you can do that the same way, of course, but this contextual selection, this incremental selection process can be really neat, and you can actually use that after you have installed treesitter, which is a great thing. So we already have that now and can use that everywhere. We can, for example, not only use that in Lua now, but we can actually use that here as well. So I can go here and press enter and I have this paragraph. Or if I am, for example, in this link, I can press it and it will go into this link node. And if I press again, it will mark the whole link there, and then I can remove that or not, just as I like. And you didn't really see that, I think, because my portrait was in the way. So let's do that again here. I press enter and it just marks the contents of the link. So I could now change that and type something different here. Or I could press enter 2 times and simply remove that whole link there. So that's really a neat thing and a powerful feature. So that is actually what basically treesitter can do for you there. So what else can treesitter do for you? Let's take a quick look. So indentation, we already talked about that. So we can actually use that to enable syntax syntax tree-based indentation. And even though it is an experimental feature, which is written here, as I've said, it's mostly working well for me in the past. So yeah, you can actually disable those features on a file type basis if you like, if it should not work somewhere well, so you can actually do that. It can actually support you in folding. So that is actually something that I usually do not use in any editor. I really do not fold my code. I'm just navigating through the whole code there by other means, like, for example, searches and grabs and fuzzy searches and stuff like that. And we will come to that as well in this series. But I usually do not use the folding feature. So I can't tell you much about that in VI. But VI, of course, and Neovim in particular using treesitter can, of course, fold your code into areas like collapse this if, collapse this branch, collapse this function, collapse this class, and all of that stuff. And it, of course, works better if Neovim has an understanding of your code based on treesitter, and therefore you can actually do that and enable that correspondingly. There are a couple of advanced setup functionalities here where you can add your own parsers if you want, and you can actually add your own queries as well. We will talk about queries in a second, but before talking about queries, I promised you to fix this problem with the Markdown language, because I don't like the highlighting that Markdown actually is using there. So what I did here, or what I know already, is I know that I like the way that the Kanagawa theme in Visual Studio Code is actually highlighting Markdown. So I quickly Googled that, and I hit this issue here on the Kanagawa repository, where somebody had the same problem, or better said, the same question, that Kanagawa is differently configured in Neovim than it is in the highlighting style of Visual Studio Code. So nicely, he created a specific configuration override here for, as you can see, Markdown in particular, which actually will override the theme configuration for this kind of queries. And there we are. These are, and we will talk about them later on in detail more. These are specifically queries which allow us to name a specific kind of construct in a language. And in this case, for example, in the markup style, which is Markdown is a markup, specifically something like in markup a link, and therefore in this one the URL, and we want to apply a specific formatting on that. So what we do is we copy actually just that information here. We go then into our Kanagawa plugin here, and we add a new option where we are here creating Kanagawa, and this option actually is known, or is called overrides. And overrides takes a function which actually takes the current color scheme or current color configuration there, so that you can actually access all of the Kanagawa colors there and do your stuff with it. And it simply returns a table with a list of those treesitter selectors, or specifically those queries which allow Neovim to identify certain positions of our code and maps those to specific highlight groups. So that is actually what was done here for us. So we can do that. We are simply quickly indenting the file here, which I've done now. And now it should actually reload. And as you can see, it's already looking much better here, because now we have configured it with a different color configuration here. And we can even modify it further. So as you can see now, the links are a little bit different, which are like, if I, for example, do something like I do something in italics here, foobar, it is marked as well. If I do something in bold, it is actually getting bold here as well and display properly. If I have something like this, this to-do checkboxes here, this style, it will properly mark them up. I like that. So I can now more and better differentiate all of the elements, and I can configure them to my liking. And I want to show you how this actually can be done. So let's take a look. For example, we have here this checked to-dos, and we have the unchecked to-dos. And maybe I want to highlight checked to-dos in differentiation to unchecked to-dos to better and quicker see them. And maybe this orange color here would be a nice thing. So what we can actually do is we are simply going to this checked thing here and we call inspect. And now we are being told that this is a markup list checked in Markdown. And it currently links to special, which is the highlight group that is actually used to show this style here. So the question is, if I now do an inspect here, yeah, that tells us that it is a Markdown list unchecked in Markdown. So we can actually differentiate between those. So let's maybe do that. Let's quickly really differentiate in them and simply create another override, one that we actually can control here. So let's create a markup list checked, or was it checked? Yeah, it was checked Markdown. And we are telling now the system that we want to link that, and I want to actually use the same orange color that the labels of the URLs, the links have. And as we can see here, we have this label defined here, and this label actually links to warning message. So let's simply reuse that and use the same highlight group here, and let's do checked list item. Okay, so now that we have that, maybe we should do something like just to visualize what we actually have done there. Okay, so now we are actually saving that, and we can reopen that, and now you can see that magically now my checked list items here are highlighted in a different way. I could have, of course, chosen any of the highlight groups, which you can find documented, and the colors as well, perfectly in the Kanagawa theme or in the theme of your choice, should you decide to install another one. And you can use that and override the colors there. And now if I, for example, change this one here, you can see now this is checked. It is automatically correctly highlighted directly here in the editor. And that's actually a look I like a little bit better than the default theming. Okay, now you have seen how we can actually use treesitter to override theming, to do incremental selections here, which you have seen as well. So I can do this is incremental selection here, or go back to the element itself, which we learned about. We are using it for indentation already, which is quite nice. But what about this next topic here? So first of all, we can X out treesitter engine now, because that one is actually finished. So that is a nice thing here. But what is this treesitter-textobjects thing? Text objects in Neovim are actually something like, for example, I already showed you before when we did this incremental selection, where I did something like removed everything within curly braces, for example. But I could do something here, for example, I could go to this, where is it? Go here. We could, for example, want to remove everything within those braces. So we can do delete inside brace, and now it's gone. So I press DIB. So I used the text object braces there to tell it that I want to delete inside this text object. So Vim, or Neovim, has an understanding about what it actually has on display there and can therefore work with that. But I need to remember that the usual round parentheses there are actually the lowercase b in our text objects there. And with incremental selection, as I've already said, you can do that a little bit more easily by simply doing it, yeah, kind of intuitively by selecting the next upper node there, which makes things a little bit better and easier for you. Nevertheless, those text objects exist, and they exist as well for treesitter, or better said, you can create those from treesitter queries. And what we can actually do with those is installing this treesitter-textobjects plugin, and then we can actually define and use them. So treesitter-textobjects, come on. So this is another plugin, but mainly it is just a sub category kind of or sub plugin of the Neovim treesitter plugin there. So what we are actually doing is we need to make sure that it actually is run after Neovim treesitter. So this is not specifically lazy Neovim, but Packer in this case, but we can easily translate that. So let's maybe copy that just to our Neovim here. Let's go into our plugins folder and let's do an Neovim treesitter-textobjects Lua here. Let's create that. Yes, let's go into that file. Let's put in what we stole there. And let's reformat this a little to kind of have what we need. So this is the repository. That is okay. That is something we need. After actually will be done in lazy.neovim through dependencies. So dependencies. So this is an object here and we are specifying there what it actually needs there. And what it actually needs there is actually this one here. Okay. I don't have... That's interesting, actually. Oh, I think I haven't installed a corresponding plugin here to handle a couple more text objects there. So, okay, so now we have that and we don't need that. So we are just specifying the repository name of the dependencies that we have here. And we want actually to call a specific init function here once this plugin is loaded. And yeah, and now everything looks like shit a little bit. So let's quickly reformat or reindent that at least. So we did that. And now we can actually write our init function. And our init function is essentially, if we take a look at the documentation, more or less the same thing as with treesitter itself, because it uses the same config object here. So what we need to do is we need to require the configs thing and then call setup on that. And then we can actually define those text objects here. So let's copy that as well. And let's put that into our init function here. And let's clean it up a little bit as well. So we want a local, which is called config, which is then essentially this require call here. And then we want config.setup and we want to actually put that in here. And if we go down here, we need to definitely remove this EOF there. And now let's try and reindent that. And it kind of looks a little bit broken still because I think I just have a curly brace too many there. So let's reindent that again. And now it worked well. Yes, it did. So perfect. So now we have that copied in here. And let's now, for now, just save that and see that the plugin is installed and that we didn't do an error, because we did do an error, unexpected symbol near end. So what did we actually do as a bad thing there? Let's quickly see plugins, text objects in near at the end. Yeah, I think that the problem here is, let's see where actually belongs this to. This is the text objects thingy here. So we have one, two, we didn't have enough braces there. So let's quickly reformat it again. And that's kind of interesting because now this should be set up. Oh yeah, we are missing the call to setup here, which is actually of course a problem. So let's go back here. So now it seems that it is actually fine with that. So yeah, now it installs the text objects there. And it now has actually loaded them. So now let's take a look at the configuration that we have here. What we mostly have here is, first of all, we need to actually enable them for selection. We can do a couple of things with the text objects based on the treesitter. The most relevant and easiest thing is doing selection for deletion, for yanking, for replacement, and stuff like that. For visual mode, all the things that you know and which you can usually use your text objects in. Look ahead defines that it should take a look at the next valid target. So for example, if you tell it to delete around a class and you are not within a class, it will simply go ahead and pick the next class it finds and deletes this one. That's kind of the same behavior as with usual Neovim text objects. So I usually have this set to true, and that's why the default is actually set to true there as well. Then you are defining key mappings, and you are defining key mappings based on the text object type as well as the query. And I will tell you, as I've promised, a little bit more about queries in a second. But so that's more or less the same thing that we already saw when we actually worked with the system here. So when we did the styling stuff. So if I actually take a look in here, I can actually see that there is something like constructor Lua, or that there is a punctuation bracket and stuff like that. Nevertheless, I don't see actually that this should be something like a table, and we can't see that there. So that's a little bit strange, isn't it? So if I do an inspect here, it will tell me that it's a keyword actually, but it is not something that we can kind of use here to find the next function, even though this is a keyword function, but it is not specifically a function, because a function is a specific construct consisting of more than one of the tree tokens, the tree nodes that we actually have in it in treesitter. And that's where queries actually come into play. Queries are a specifically defined thing here in treesitter. And let me quickly, for example, go into the, where is Lua here? Into the Lua language, then I can show you. Wait a second, where is it? Lua modules, there, Lua. So I click the Lua language treesitter repository here. And as we have already seen, there is this grammar.js. And somewhere there should be a folder called queries. There it is, folder called queries. And it has all of those simple and different queries in here. So let's, for example, see the highlights query. And let's maybe search for function in here. So let's do a function search. And we see that there is actually a function keyword here. So this is kind of a part of that thing. So we have a function declaration, which is an identifier. We have then a field, and all of those actually map, or a table constructor with a function, and so on and so on. And it actually tells the treesitter system where everywhere something like a function can actually be. So I'm not sure if there actually is the inner thing is something special there, but it essentially tells the system where in this syntax tree can functions be. So how are they used and where can they be used? And this actually allows, in the end, the treesitter here to actually identify those things in your syntax tree and find the next one of them. So if I, for example, have this one activated, AF, and it should already be activated because we reloaded this thing with this configuration. So I could do technically something like, I want, for example, here in this IF, I want visual mode inside a function. So VIF. And what did it actually select? Yeah, it selected the inside of my function. So that's actually now what we can do. Or I can do something like delete around functions. So now my whole function is gone because it knows that this whole thing here, this thing here, is the outside of this specific function that we have here, which is really nice. And I see there that we are still not indented nicely, so let's quickly fix that. Nevertheless, we can now define all kinds of different queries. For example, we have one here for classes. Okay, I'm not 100% sure if a table is a class in Lua. Let's see, maybe that is actually mapped. No, it's not. Okay, so I don't really know what a table in Lua is, but we can maybe find out. Nevertheless, we actually have now the capability of defining all kinds of new text objects for us based on those queries that we have. And a list of built-in queries actually that are more or less existing for all functions here can be found in the Neovim treesitter text objects repository here. Yeah, we will talk about swap and move in a second. Where is it? There should actually be, yeah, there. So there are a couple of built-in text objects that you can actually use to use that, and it's explained here as well. You can of course define your own text objects there with specific capture groups, and here is explained how you can actually create in this scheme-like syntax your own capture definitions there to find specific areas in your code. Nevertheless, there are a couple and a lot of different build-ins. We could, for example, add one for comments maybe. Maybe we should just add one for comment. Let's see. So maybe comment outer would be a nice thing. So let's quickly add that here by doing something like, where will we actually map that? Maybe, so it's an A because it's around. If we do the outer part, C is already taken for class. That's kind of bad. So maybe we do something like a O. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but we will see. So this would be comment outer. And now if we define that and reopen our Neovim and go back into our plugin there, and we have, for example, this comment here, and I'm here now, I'm before the comment, or I'm even in this enable line here, and I now do delete around comment. It will go to look ahead to the next comment and remove that. And that's all the magic that is to it. Or yeah, I can do something like VOC, and it should actually, wait, what did it do? VOC? That's wait, why did I do OC? I should have done VAO, so sorry. So it jumps to the next comment actually and highlights that. So if I do VAO, it jumps to the next comment and highlights that again. And this is the magic of text objects. And you can essentially create and define them absolutely to your liking there. So take a look at them, play around with them, take a look at the list, what is there and what isn't, and corresponding to the language that you are working in. Not all of them will be supported. For example, I'm not sure that Lua will support the class query because Lua doesn't have classes of that sort. So yeah. You can actually provide, that is an example here, a description. Why we need a description, we will see at the end of this session, and what this is good for actually. And yeah, we can actually do that. So there are different modes here. So we have actually this key maps for selection now enabled, as you can see here. But there were some other sections here which talked about movement and swap. So what is movement and swap? Movement and swap is essentially more or less based on the same idea. You have this, you can tell, for example, the system that you want to be able to swap something, and then you have swap next, for example, leader A key. So if you press your defined leader key, which I think in my situation where we configured it here is space, you can set that to any key you want. For example, if you press leader A, it will go ahead and swap the inner parameter with the next inner parameter. Let's just kind of quickly see how this works, because we can easily do that. We are just going, wait a second, we are just going down here to this brace there. And then we are just adding this here, and let's quickly clean that up a little because we don't actually need that. So let's go there. That is the end there. So we don't need those. So now let's go up, let's format, and we should have an indentation here. And now, even though I don't really use swapping, I mostly don't use swapping, we can try that out. So let's do something like nvim foo.lua here. And let's define a function hello, which takes the message as well as the who or something like that. And then we have an end here, of course. And now let's assume I want to swap those two parameters here. I should simply be able to press leader A. So as you can see, I pressed leader A, and it swapped those two parameters around, which is actually a neat feature. Why didn't I use that before? So you can actually use that to easily use now leader A and leader capitalized A to swap the arguments around here. And this essentially should work, maybe even in lists, we will see. So if I do something like foo equals bar here and buzz equals bloop or something like that. And now can I actually do something like leader A here? Yeah, I can. So I can actually use that to even swap things in a list. So if I would have the third entry here, come on, entry, I should actually be able, if I quickly format that here, I should actually be able to now press this to just move it, yeah, here along, and I can easily move that wherever I want, because it is moving it, it's swapping it, and then going to the same, or it's staying on this parameter here. And it would actually work with any language that knows what a parameter is. So that's actually kind of a neat feature. I think I will just leave that in there, because that kind of swapping parameters is a neat thing. I'm not using that in Neovim yet, but maybe I should. So that is another really nice and really neat feature that we just quickly enabled, and it's all thanks to treesitter. And we have move as well, where we can actually move around in our code. So we can define movement arguments as we have, for example, for braces and stuff like that in Neovim, where we then could, for example, say, okay, I want to go to the next function, please. Or I want to go to the next class or the next loop or something like that. So where we can use, and usually in VI, that's why it's starting here with a square bracket, but usually the square brackets closed and open are used because they are on an English keyboard or an American keyboard in a nice position near your base enter key and stuff like that. So they are used to navigate forward and backward within your different text object sections within BI. So that's the base configuration there that is used, but you can change it if you like. So that's actually a way to do that movement, and that's text objects based on treesitter. And that's another really cool feature which treesitter allows you to do, which you couldn't do otherwise. Okay, so we now have treesitter fully installed here. So let's quickly cross it out here and simply save this. And now to kind of end this session, I want to install one other plugin very quickly with you, which is WhichKey. And WhichKey actually is a very neat plugin there, which can help you with all of those different key shortcuts, should you not being remembering them. So we have now installed a couple of plugins which create new keyboard shortcuts for you, even though that you can define them yourself actually, which is quite nice. It might be kind of nice to have them displayed to you in case they are something that is seldomly used or that you sometimes just forget. So let's take a look at WhichKey Envim, because WhichKey Envim is something that I've seen now in nearly every Neovim configuration that I've taken a look at. And it's very easy to install with LazyVim because it's done by the same author, I think. So we are simply doing a plugin here, and we are calling it WhichKey .lua. And we are saving here to create that file. Yes, and it's already loaded. And now we can simply put that in there, what we copied from the internet. Because as I've said, copying from the internet and just executing always a good idea. No, you should always check what you copy and paste from the internet. But this is actually kind of the base configuration, which you can very quickly see that it works out. So what it has here, it simply loads the plugin. It defines the event to be loaded at the very lazy point, which is kind of at the end of everything, because we don't want to stop Neovim from starting up quickly. And if which key isn't then available when you press it for the first time, we don't really care if it's loaded after that. We can have a couple of options, and I think we might have some in a second. And then you have a key definition here, which actually makes sure that the which key is actually loaded on, or better said, executed here if you press leader ? For the base key showing up. I don't usually have this here because I actually don't really use this base key. But you will see in a second what actually which key is. So let's quickly install that. And now it should be there. And now we should have which key. So press leader ? And you can already see that it now shows us what it can actually do. And I think that was not leader ? Was it? Yeah, it was leader ? Okay, so yeah, it now shows us that our base key configuration, for example, has something with, we can use the enter key to start selecting nodes within the treesitter. That's great. So we configured that. And we can do space A to swap previous parameter inner, or to use the lowercase a to swap next parameter inner. So that's actually exactly what we configured before, and that's where actually the these neat little descriptions come into place. So I could, for example, go down here and define this one as, how is this done, query, and then description. Okay, so let's do and create an option here, a table here, and we do query. No, not like that. Sorry. Yes, I want to go there, and now I want description here, and this description should be something like swap with next parameter or something like that. Yeah, so we define that, we save that, we do that, and now if I go here and I press my leader key, it shows me that I have here the option to swap with next parameter. And as you have seen, I have not done leader key ? Which actually shows me the buffer local key maps. That is the defined which key thingy here. But I have just pressed my leader key. So what which key actually does is it knows about all of your mapped keys, and once you start some kind of key sequence, it will simply display to you what you can actually do with your keys now. So if we go back to our selection with text objects, and I want, for example, to delete something like the inside of this function or the outside of this function, I could do something like, I know that I want to delete something inside, but I don't know anymore what the key for function is. So I simply press DI, and I will already be greeted with an information about what I can now delete. And interestingly enough, there is now no entrance for the F for function, because that should actually work. So wait a second. DIF? Wasn't it DIF? I'm kind of irritated now because DAF should not work. Maybe it wasn't function. Let's quickly see. Maybe I remember wrong already and we have another mapping here. Okay, so I don't really know why this is happening. I will figure it out. I think I changed something very, very dumb and stupid here in the meantime. So something kind of broke. But I'm quite sure it has nothing to do with which key, because which key wasn't even loaded a second ago when it didn't work anymore. So yeah, I will figure that out and I will take a look at that. Maybe I did some wrong configuration where with the swapping, or I have a brace there somewhere. If you actually have seen me do something dumb here which caused this, please leave me a comment. Nevertheless, I think we can stop at that. We have the which key configuration now here. We have a proper configuration with treesitter, which I will repair because it can only be a really stupid that small error there in the aftermath of this video here. And I actually hope you liked it. And if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. As I've already said, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. You know the drill if you want to be informed when the next video is out, where we will then take a care at FZF Lua. FZF Lua actually is a very, very powerful replacement for something that you might have already heard about in Neovim, which is telescope. I prefer, since some time ago, FZF Lua, which is an FZF-based implementation of more or less the same what telescope is. If you don't know what telescope is, you will be in a world of wonder once we are actually installing that, because it will make you capable of quickly grabbing through your project, quickly finding files by fuzzy searching, or specific references and implementations of specific functions, and that once we have then installed the LSP as well. So please join me in the next session when we do all of that stuff, and I hope you had fun joining me in this one. So till then, bye!